On this week's NESN Patriots Podcast, we will discuss Josh Gordon's debut, Julian Edelman's return, and look forward on a short week to Thursday night's matchup against the Colts. Hello and welcome to this week's NESN Patriots Podcast. I'm Doug Kyed, joined as always by Zack Cox. Zack, how are you doing?
Doing well, Doug. How are you doing?
I am doing good. We are recording this from the Mike Reese studio at Gillette Stadium, I guess we'll call it.
Big thanks to Mike.
Yes, big thanks to Mike, as always, for letting us record in his room here in the media workroom. But Julian Edelman is back.
He's back.
He's back in the building. Not officially back on the Patriots roster, but he is back in the building. He's allowed to practice. Patriots received a roster exemption for Edelman, which runs out, as I learned last night, Thursday at 4 p.m. So the Patriots must make a roster move to create room for Edelman 4 hours and 20 minutes before their matchup against the Colts in Week 5. So that really doesn't give the Colts many hours, I guess, to prepare for whatever player isn't going to be on the Patriots roster for that game. But let's just, before we get into last week's game against the Dolphins, this week's game against the Colts on this short week, let's get into some of the possibilities who could be released to create room for Edelman. I think probably the first place to start would be the inactive list from Week 4.
Yeah, so on that list are players like Geno Grissom, who seems to have been cut and re-signed by the Patriots at least 35 times since he came into the league a couple of years ago. He's always an option as a guy who really only plays special teams, doesn't really have much of a role on defense. Some other players that might make a little bit more of an impact. Somebody like Kyed Davis, who was really a guy that we were pretty high on over the summer. A lot of people were pretty high on after he missed his entire rookie season with an injury. Played well in the preseason and the summer. So far, not so much this year. He was inactive for that game the other day against the Dolphins. Another name would be a guy like Cole Croston, who's the team's third tackle right now. He was also inactive the past game. Ted Karras, who was a surprise inactive against the Dolphins. He had been the team's top interior offensive lineman backup until Brian Schwenke took over that spot against Miami. So a couple of options. It's likely whoever the guy that's moved off the roster for Julian Edelman is going to be one of the bottom of the roster types, as you would imagine, as makes sense in this situation. But I don't know. What's your read on this situation? Who would be your favorite in here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Geno Grissom, since he's dealing with an injury, it could make sense to waive him, put him on the practice squad until he's fully healthy, and then get him back on the active roster, kind of delaying that whole process of having to cut a guy for good. Outside of him, I do think that Croston and Kyed Davis are probably the most likely scenarios. Croston began the season on the Patriots practice squad and only was signed to the active roster when Marcus Cannon got hurt, so the Patriots needed a new reserve tackle. The only issue with cutting Croston or Kyed Davis is if the Patriots fear that they wouldn't clear waivers, and then they wouldn't be able to slip them onto the practice squad. And as it goes with Croston, that fourth offensive tackle is pretty important for the roster in case they do suffer an injury somewhere else. So they might be a little bit hesitant to cut him.
Also because we have seen Marcus Cannon come out of some games. He has missed some games. He has missed a game this season with an injury. He's been spelled at times with Leajier and Waddle. So yeah, like we saw last season, that tackle depth is something you kind of want to have on the roster if you can.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Davis, like you said, he's got promise, but he really hasn't shown much in games so far. So it's possible that they might risk him on waivers to slip him onto the practice squad. I think that fans might be looking at maybe like the wide receiver position, maybe the cornerback position as places where the Patriots could make room. I can't see them cutting a wide receiver because that would basically mean cutting Philip Dorsett, Chris Hogan, or Cordarrelle Patterson. Patterson, I think that 55-yard touchdown catch, eliminated any possibilities that the Patriots would move on from him at this point. Cornerback's a little bit interesting because they've got 7 players at that position. So if they felt like they could slip Keon Crossan onto their practice squad, then that would be a possibility. But that seems kind of doubtful.
It does seem like the reason that they kept Keon Crossan and J.C. Jackson coming into the season, though, was probably because they were afraid that they would not be able to slip them onto the practice squad. And now J.C. Jackson's not in danger of being cut because he actually has played a fairly significant amount over these last 2 games, had an interception the other day. Keon Crossan still haven't seen much of. I don't know if he played any defensive snaps against Miami, even in the blowout win. So, yeah, he would theoretically be an option. I think that he's still probably a guy that would most likely get claimed, so that might be a little bit dicey. Yeah,
definitely. And then the last 2 players that were added to the Patriots roster who you could always look to see, like, if they were the last players added, maybe they would be released. That would be running back Kenyon Barner and defensive end John Simon. Barner, Patriots need because he's their 3rd running back. And if they, lost Sony Michel or James White, they would definitely need to rely on Barner. And John Simon actually had a really solid game against the Dolphins, so I can't really see them moving on from him before they moved on from a guy like Keontae Davis, who wasn't even active in that game. So it definitely will be interesting. Like I said, I think that Grissom, Davis, or Croston are probably the best choices on the roster to get cut. And if I had to pick between those 3, I might say Croston just because he did begin the season on the practice squad, and the Patriots already slipped him through waivers once, so presumably they could probably do that again with him.
That's probably a fair bet, yeah.
Let's look back at that Dolphins game. It was Josh Gordon's debut. He caught 2 passes for 32 yards.
It was a great game from Josh Gordon, all things
considered. It was a good game for Josh Gordon, absolutely. Caught 2 slant passes, or he ran 2 slants. Caught both. I said that way wrong. He caught 2 passes on slant routes. That's the correct way to state that. He also had a good block on James White's 22-yard touchdown run. And, all things considered, 18 snaps for Gordon. I think it was a success, and I think that he can build on that moving forward.
Agreed, yeah. And you would have to imagine that after seeing what he did in that limited workload on Sunday, you have to imagine that workload would continue to increase as it goes forward. I'm still not sure that he's going to be a 70% snap player this week against the Colts, but you have to think that the Patriots did seem pretty happy with what they saw from between talking to Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. It seems like they were all pretty impressed with what Josh Gordon did out there. He's been really receiving nothing but praise ever since the team agreed to kind of acknowledge his existence. So yeah, I think as long as he continues on this sort of upward trajectory, he could really be a legitimate weapon in this offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there's definitely a possibility based on what we saw in week 4, based on the fact that he hasn't been in trouble at all. I think that by the end of the season he could be that number 2 wide receiver behind Julian Edelman, as long as Edelman stays healthy and is active as well. So I think that's a pretty solid 1-2 wide receiver core that the Patriots could be looking at down the end of the season. I mean, obviously still a lot of things have to go right for them for that to happen, but definitely showed a decent amount of promise. Another guy who showed promise was running back Sony Michel, who struggled for the Patriots, in my opinion, in weeks 2 and 3, but definitely had a much better game in week 4, and I think that a lot of that was due to the fact that the Patriots' offensive line was really kind of bullying the Dolphins' defensive line up front, and they were creating way more room for Sony Michel to work within their offense.
Yeah, I totally agree. I went back and looked at some of Sony Michel's best plays from this game yesterday once the game film came out online, and on almost all of his best plays were plays where the offensive line just totally destroyed the Dolphins' front 7 out there. There was some really good blocks from Trent Brown, some really good blocks from some wide receivers. Both tight ends, Dwayne Allen and Rob Gronkowski, got involved. So I think from Sony Michel's first 2 games, I think he got a little bit too much criticism because I don't think that the offensive line was particularly good in those games. In this game, he's probably getting a little bit too much praise for his performance. That, yeah. Even though it was a solid performance, there were a couple plays where he made guys miss, where he ran through a tackle or 2. But I think that the biggest kind of most of the credit for this performance belongs to the offensive line, just like most of the blame for those early performances also belongs to the offensive line. Still, though, very positive performance from Sony Michel, especially what we saw from him the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, definitely trending in the right direction for Michel there, and I do think that he could probably improve as well based on what we saw from him at Georgia. I still think that he looked a little bit quicker when he was at Georgia, looked a little bit faster, showed a little bit more burst, so maybe as he continues to knock the rust off. This is basically his preseason right now.
This was his 3rd preseason game right there.
Yeah, essentially. So now, moving on to this week against the Colts, the preseason period basically is over for him. So let's see if he can continue to improve as the season goes along. But, you can't really complain about a 25 carry, 112 yard performance. I would like to see more of him in the passing game. He let up a quarterback hit in the game when he was in as a pass blocker. So not perfect for him there. He definitely struggled as a receiver in weeks 2 and 3. So I would like to see the Patriots offense get a little bit less predictable when Michel and when James White are on the field, because basically if Michel is on the field, there's an 80% chance the Patriots are running, and if James White's on the field, there's about an 80% chance the Patriots are passing.
That's what I was just about to say. You'd still like to see a little bit more variety and unpredictability from this offense. I believe Sony Michel played 33 snaps the other day. He ran the ball on 25 of them, and he ran the ball well, so that's not really a problem. But if defenses are going to be able to start kind of keying in on this if they haven't already, and the fact that the Patriots really only have 2 running backs right now because Kenyon Barner wasn't used until garbage time. He wasn't really used at all in that game. It's not like they don't have the Rex Burkhead in there or the even the Brandon Bolden from years past. So it's really just Sony Michel and James White, and it's going to. There's a deadline, I think, on this where you can continue to use these guys with one guy runs the ball and one guy is in on passing plays. So I think they need to vary it up a little bit. Like we said, didn't really hurt them at all against the Dolphins, but yeah, going forward, I think they might try to add a little bit of a new element in there.
And I don't think that this offense will ever become as unpredictable as it was last season, because when you had Dion Lewis in there who could catch the ball pretty much as well as he could run the ball, Rex Burkhead could catch the ball pretty much as well as he could run the ball, when those were your top 2 running backs, then there was a lot of unpredictability involved in the offense, and the defense really didn't know what you were doing. The Patriots would definitely prefer to have James White as their pass-catching back, and while he showed improvements since his career began in 2014 as a pure runner, he's still never going to be a guy who you're going to want to run between the tackles 15, 20 times a game. That's just not the kind of player that he is. And as far as this season goes, I really can't see Sony Michel getting to the point where Dion Lewis or Rex Burkhead were last year, with the Patriots trusting him that much in the passing game. I think that that's where the improvements will come. I think the Patriots will continue to use Michel more in the passing game, but at the same time, you don't want to use Michel 60 or 70% of snaps. You want to mix in James White. So I think that predictability will be an issue for the rest of the season for the Patriots, but they can make strides to improve it a little bit by involving Michel more in the passing game.
Yeah, I'm not expecting Michel to get to like you said, the Dion Lewis or Rex Burkhead level this season, but I do expect to see some improvement from him in the passing game. He hasn't really. They didn't use him really at all in that area against the Dolphins. He wasn't targeted at all, and when he was used in the passing game in those first 2 weeks, he was pretty inconsistent in that area. Had a couple of drops. Was I believe, did he only have 1 catch, maybe 2 catches? I think 2 catches on 5 or 6 targets. So I do think they'll continue to bring him along in that area, though. It seemed like they were like, okay, let's get this running thing down first, then we'll kind of expand you to the other areas.
Definitely. Another way that we saw improvement out of the Patriots was on defense. Huge improvement out of the Patriots defense, who really struggled in weeks 2 and 3 against the Jacksonville Jaguars and Detroit Lions, but they dominated the hell out of the Dolphins in this game. Yep. They allowed less than 200 net yards. It was 172 net yards that they allowed in the entire game to the Dolphins. 75 of those yards came in garbage time when Brock Osweiler was at quarterback and the Patriots were leading 38-0 at that point. And then you can even remove some other yards out of the equation as well, because the Patriots were letting up small chunks of yards on 3rd and long where the Dolphins weren't picking up first downs. And they also were allowing chunks of yards before the first half when the Dolphins didn't score. They were basically letting them move a little bit down the field to drain the clock at that point. So when you eliminate garbage time, when you eliminate those short gains on 3rd and long, and when you eliminate what happened before the half, the Patriots allowed 54 meaningful yards to the Dolphins all game. You're not going to get much better than that.
And 22 of those came on the very first play of the game.
Wow.
So basically after that, it was 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out. I mean, I'm pulling up this possession chart right now, but it was pretty remarkable how the Patriots were able to just completely neutralize this Dolphins offense that we talked about all last week has some weapons. I mean, they've got a lot of speed at wide receiver. They've got some talented running backs, and Frank Gore, who's been around forever, and Kenyon Drake, who had 100 yards against them last year. And Ryan Tannehill had been having a pretty solid season coming back from that torn ACL. But, yeah, this Miami offense was just completely erased in this game. And I'm looking at it now. Yeah, this was the Dolphins' drive chart. It's 4 plays, 5 plays, 3 plays, 1 play, which was a fumble.
Yep.
3 plays, 3 plays, 3 plays, 4 plays, 3 plays, and then 13 plays on that garbage time touchdown drive. So, like you said, this is as good of a performance as you can ask for from the Patriots defense.
Yeah, it was really unbelievable. And I think that there wasn't one way to pinpoint how they improved. We just talked to Colts head coach Frank Reich. I asked him what he saw from the Patriots defense, how they improved in week 4. He said it was getting pressure after the quarterback. I think the Patriots defense is going to look different when Trey Flowers is on the field. They are basically completely different when Flowers is on the field. They allow about 2.6 yards per carry when Flowers is playing. That goes up to about 4.6 yards per carry. They also allow about 2 fewer yards per pass when Trey Flowers is on the field. And it's kind of incredible because Flowers didn't even make seemingly a huge impact on the game, but he is so much better at setting the edge against the run. He is a guy who can consistently get pressure. I think that opposing offenses have to focus a lot of attention on Trey Flowers, and that allows other guys to make plays. And when Trey Flowers is at defensive end, he can hold up an offensive lineman, which then in turn allows the Patriots linebackers to make plays. And I thought that, maybe the biggest difference in that game was just the way that Dante Hightower, Landon Roberts, and Kyle Van Noy played, because they all had really good games.
I agree. I mean, you saw it right from the beginning too. I believe it was either Miami's first drive or their second drive. There was a 3-play span where Landon Roberts broke up a pass downfield. Dante Hightower blew up a run in the right in the hole at the line there, and then Kyle Van Noy had a quarterback hit, or at least a quarterback pressure to force an incompletion on the next play, and that really kind of persisted throughout the game. This was the best game that I've seen this group of linebackers play maybe ever together. I mean, it was at least in a very long time. I mean, Dante Hightower had easily his best game of the season. Kyle Van Noy was all over the place. He recovered that fumble that set up the touchdown that really kind of separated the Patriots and broke the game wide open. He also was in the backfield pretty much all game, had some nice plays against the run too. So
yeah, he redirected, was it Kenyon Drake on one 6-yard loss or something like that?
Yep. And this was a linebacking core that has caught a ton of heat, deservedly so, over the last couple of weeks, and they really rebounded in this game. And obviously the Patriots played well in the secondary and up front as well, but I think that the improvement from the linebackers was really the difference in this game. Yeah,
and I mean, the secondary did continue to play well in this game. I think that probably the best unit on this defense so far this season has been the cornerbacks. I think that Stephon Gilmore has been playing like Stephon Gilmore. Jason McCourty's been even better than I expected him. Jonathan Jones has been definitely a solid option there in the slot. Ryan Tannehill really tried to pick on Jonathan Jones and didn't go that well for the Dolphins. Yeah. It's not like he was making any interceptions.
Yeah. Jones had a rough couple of weeks. He wasn't too great against Jacksonville and Detroit.
Yeah, but I mean he rebounded decently against the Dolphins, and then J.C. Jackson, the Patriots' undrafted cornerback, had an interception on his first target of the season. So that's definitely, he's doing pretty well for himself there as a rookie. And I thought that the safeties played better as well. Patrick Chung, getting him back from the concussion was big. Devin McCourty allowed the touchdown there at the end to Frank Gore, but it was kind of a weird play where it looked like he might have been trying to strip the ball rather than go for the tackle. I think he was trying to preserve the shutout there, and it didn't go well for him. But all things considered, front to back, the Patriots defense looked dominant, and I mean, in my eyes, this shows that they can be a good defense this year. I'm sure that no one's ready to call them a good defense after what they did in weeks 2 and 3, but this at least showed that they have more potential than I thought they did after 2 weeks where they really struggled.
I agree, and I think the biggest issue with this defense is going to be consistency. Mm-hmm. I mean, because they showed in week 1 that they can be a pretty good defense. Obviously, that wasn't nearly as kind of well-rounded and dominant in effort as this past week was, but they had a really good game against the Houston Texans, had 2 terrible games against the Jaguars and Detroit Lions, then had a fantastic game this week against the Dolphins. So the Patriots just need to string these together. They need to do what they did last season, because they started off really shaky on defense through those first 4 weeks, and then they really turned that corner and were allowing 14 points, 17 points, 10 points, 20 points. They had a string of I think it was 8 or 9 games in a row where they allowed 20 or fewer points. That's what this Patriots defense needs to do. They need to lock down and kind of get some consistency. Obviously, like you said, they're not going to play as well as they did against the Dolphins every single week.
It would be impossible.
That would be physically impossible. I mean, the 2000 Ravens didn't play that well every week. I mean, it's not going to happen where you can't expect this kind of dominance every week, but you can expect something that's clearly better than what they showed in the previous 2 weeks. And if they show that over the span of a couple weeks, I think that you can say that this defense is back on the right track. But if they have another regression this game, which I'm not expecting because the Colts, I mean, we'll get into them in a little bit. They don't really have a bunch of terrific offense or weapons on offense, but Patriots need to the defense needs to get some consistency and needs to get some progression going here.
Patriots do play the 1-3 Colts this week, and one big question for the game is whether or not Rob Gronkowski is going to play. Just full transparency, it's Tuesday at 2 p.m. right now. We have not seen Patriots practice yet. The Patriots released a projected hypothetical injury report on Monday, which said that Rob Gronkowski would not have practiced. Tom Brady said on Westwood One last night that Gronkowski is day-to-day, and that's basically what all of the reports are saying, too.
From Brady there. Those were a little strange. His comments on Westwood One, where it was making it seem like Rob Gronkowski is legitimately day-to-day and not... I don't know. I guess you heard them live. I only read them off of your Twitter. It struck me as a little odd.
Yeah, he said that, he's a tough guy. He'll play if he can. But, I mean, personally, if Gronk can play, I'd play him in this game because the Colts look like a pushover at 1-3, but it's early in the season. I don't think there's any guarantees about any teams right now. And after this game, the Patriots basically have a bye week before their next matchup Sunday night against the Chiefs. So you're going from Thursday night to the following Sunday night. That would give Gronk a ton of time to recover if he did suffer some sort of setback in this game. And it seems like this is just the ankle injuries that Gronk has been dealing with all season, really, where he's been limited in practice, he's been questionable, and then he plays. Didn't look like there was anything major that happened to his ankle that re-aggravated this injury. So personally, I'd put him out there just to even, use him as a decoy if you have to, because it doesn't seem like this injury has a huge risk of getting much worse, and then that does give him about 9 or 10 days to get over it. And, I mean, I just like to see this offense at full strength because, like we said earlier, Julian Edelman is coming back in this game. I like to see Edelman and Gronk on the field for the first time since, November 2016? That's the last time they all played together.
Before Gronk's... the back injury a couple years back. Yeah.
And then you've got Josh Gordon, who's probably going to see his snaps increase as well. So I just want to see the potential of this offense in this game.
I agree. I mean, I can see both sides of the Gronkowski injury situation. On one hand, it is a short week. There's only 4 days to recover between Sunday's game and Thursday's game, so you might not want to push him back into a game if he's not quite 100%. But then, like you mentioned, they do have basically a bye week. They have 10 days off. Yeah. After this, he has the whole weekend to just kind of relax and recover. So I think if he's not 100%, I wouldn't play him in this game. But if he is, and it's just a precautionary thing, I think you do send him out there.
Tom Brady has been a interesting case study, I guess, through the first 4 weeks because he definitely doesn't look like his normal self right now. And I think I wrote a piece in July or August or maybe even earlier than that basically said that if Brady doesn't look like himself to begin the season, if Brady looks like he's basically the 2013 version of himself, don't freak out. This has a lot to do with the targets that he's throwing to. And I think that is why he's struggling. I mean, he's got a 94 passer rating so far. He's averaging 230 yards per game. He's got 9 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. It's not like it's been dire for Brady or anything, but he doesn't look like his normal self. He is making more mistakes than usual. He's taking more risks than usual, and he's throwing more interceptions than usual. But when Edelman's fully back and when Gronk is healthy, I do think that he's going to go back to looking like himself again.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason so far to say that Brady won't become Tom Brady once he has this full complement of weapons back, but it's undeniable that he has not played particularly well so far this season. If you look at his stats, I mean, he's 21st in completion percentage, 24th in passing yards per game, 27th in yards per attempt, 16th in passer rating. Has already thrown 4 interceptions through 4 games. So these are very un-Brady-like numbers. And I mean, I would like you would, I believe as well, chalk it up to the fact that his wide receivers haven't really given him much of anything through these first 4 games, and because they haven't given him much of anything, he hasn't been able to lean on Rob Gronkowski as much as he likes to. I don't know. I think that this will improve, especially as long as Julian Edelman is anything resembling his 2016 self, which again is no sure thing, considering that he basically has been out of the game for a year and a half, close to 2 years now. But if he's anything like the Julian Edelman that he used to be, which Tom Brady seems to believe he will be, then I do think Tom Brady will be fine going forward. I'm interested to see it, though, because it's strange. We haven't seen Tom Brady start a season like this in a long time.
No, it has been strange. And I seem like I'm kind of in the minority here, but I expect Julian Edelman to be himself when he comes back. I mean, it's been a long time since he tore that ACL. He tore it in the summer of 2017. He just had 4 games off on his suspension where he could try to rebuild his strength in that knee and rebuild his cutting ability and get back up to 100%. He could be a little rusty, but he played in the preseason. It's not like he hasn't played football since last summer. So I don't know. I mean, maybe it would be crazy to expect Edelman to go out there and catch 100 passes over the next 12 games, but I do think that he's going to make an immediate impact on this team, and I do think that him being back is going to take attention away from Rob Gronkowski. I think that he's adding an element that this offense just has not had with him out, where he can get open in the shallow part of the field. So I'm really expecting him to look like himself here.
Do you think the age plays a factor at all? In fact, he's 32 now, hasn't played football in so long, and with the skills that he has, he's all about quick cuts, quickness, those kind of moving around underneath the defense. It's kind of traits that usually are kind of associated with some younger players. I mean, him being this deep into his career with a serious injury like this, coming off such a long layoff, does that give you any pause at all? Or
not too much. I think that it's fair to say that age could play a factor here, because he is definitely, obviously, a couple of years older since he last played. But I don't know. I think that the rest has helped him here. He might not be exactly the same player as he was, and sometimes slot receivers do start to lose it a little bit as they get older. We saw that with Wes Welker, but some of that was just Welker's body starting to break down. So I do think that if Edelman can stay healthy here, then I don't know. Maybe I'm just being too optimistic with Edelman, but I just have high hopes for him.
Yeah.
I think the age thing is definitely fair to talk about, but I don't know. I think that I don't know. I just think that he's going to make a big impact on this offense, and I think that having Gordon in there, he's going to increase his reps. I think that definitely helps as well, and I think that all 3 of those guys working together with James White, I just expect this offense to look a lot different moving forward here.
Yeah, a Patriots offense with Julian Edelman, Josh Gordon, James White, and Rob Gronkowski looks a lot different from the one that we've seen over the first 4 weeks of the season. So I'm pretty excited to see how this thing looks when it's at full strength, because it feels like a while since we've seen a Patriots offense with all of its available pieces there and active and contributing.
Definitely. So Thursday night, Patriots will play the Colts here at Gillette Stadium at 8:20 p.m. That's the kickoff time. The short week, I don't know how much it's going to affect the Patriots. Tom Brady said that he kind of likes the short weeks. I think that it's possible that the short week here could kind of play into the Patriots' hands a little bit, since they are coming off such a dominant performance, where maybe they will be able to carry over that momentum a little bit. Maybe they'll be able to carry over the confidence. I think that after you play a game as well as you did in week 4, you're probably itching to get back onto the field a little bit, especially after the struggles that they had early in the season. So I'm certainly expecting a pretty big Patriots win here over the Colts.
Well. Yeah.
Obviously, anything can happen early in the season, but I think that the Patriots are probably going to keep rolling here against the Colts.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. Looking over the Colts roster these last couple days, it's not particularly impressive, especially because T.Y. Hilton won't be or is not expected to play in this game after he left Sunday's overtime loss to Houston with a hamstring injury, I believe it was. That means Ryan Grant and Chester Rogers are the Colts' top 2 receivers right now, which doesn't inspire too much confidence there on that depth chart. Andrew Luck is playing pretty well this season.
Yeah.
He's finally back to full strength after missing all of last year with that shoulder injury. He's actually throwing a ridiculous number of passes. He's on pace for 744 pass attempts this season, which would be the most in NFL history.
Wow.
And it would shatter his previous high of, I believe it was 627 way back in his rookie year. So Frank Reich has not been shy about just handing the keys back over to Andrew Luck, even though he is coming back from a pretty long layoff. And he's playing pretty well. He had a great game against Houston the other day, but the weapons around him, I mean, I just don't think they have enough juice offensively to match this Patriots team.
No, the Colts really can't run the ball at all, which is why they're having to throw so much. And I think that Luck is definitely doing the best with what he's got in the offense so far. He's definitely completing passes at a higher clip than he has throughout his career, which credit goes to him on that one. But I think based on the weapons, his yards per attempt are pretty low, and that's what's going to happen when your wide receivers are Ryan Grant and Zach Pascal and Chester Rogers and Jack Doyle's been banged up. So yeah, definitely not a lot of big names on this Colts roster. It will be the return of Jacoby Brissett. Will be the return of Jabal Sheard. Will be the return of Kenny Moore. So there's some connections on there. It's
Adam Vinatieri as
Adam
well.
Vinatieri. Josh McDaniels almost became the Colts head coach. That's
Rivalry's
what led
back on.
to Frank Reich being back in there. Rivalry's back on. So I don't know. It's going to be a fun game. Thursday night. I know that we enjoy these Thursday night games because it means less work for us during the week. But
and a weekend off, which is nice.
And a weekend off, which is fantastic because we don't have to worry about covering the Red Sox playoff games, which other outlets do. So,
thoughts and prayers.
All right, so that will do it for this week's podcast. Go to NESN.com for all of your Patriots coverage. Follow me on Twitter at Doug Kyed. Follow Zach on Twitter at Zack Cox NESN. We will be back next week to preview the Patriots-Chiefs matchup, and we will be recapping what happens Thursday night against the Colts.